NBA history is filled with countless what-ifs. What if Derrick Rose never suffered such a horrible knee injury? What if LeBron had chosen to sign with the Bulls rather than the Heat? What if all-time greats like Steve Nash or Carmelo Anthony just had one other piece on their team that brought them to a championship and changed their legacy forever? What if Giannis or Embiid were drafted by a different team? How would their careers turn out differently? These are all questions that will be answered in this video series as I resimulate the NBA from the 09-10 season up until the current year as we watch together as history writes itself. If you would like to watch me do this live, go to my Twitch channel at twitch.tv/bigbird4. The link is at the top of the description. For this series, I recreated the entire 09-10 roster from stars to benchwarmers to free agents. I calibrated for every single factor for each player, including ratings, contracts, their player growth and potential, and even appearance. If you want to get a more in-depth look at the roster I made, here's a video I made on that where I go through each team and show you all the players I included. To start off our sim, LeBron had his best season of his career in the 09-10 season and won MVP as well as Defensive Player of the Year, after leading his Cavaliers to 66 wins single-handedly. He was knocked out by the Celtics, however, who got knocked out by the Sixers, who eventually lost to the Denver Nuggets in the NBA Finals, but managed to beat the Lakers in the Conference Finals after losing multiple players to injury. In the 10-11 season, the Nuggets signed Bosh in free agency, and the Sixers signed Dwayne Wade, and they yet again faced each other in the finals. Wade won MVP after leading the Sixers to the top of the East, but the Nuggets would prevail again, as Melo would win his second ring. In 2012, both the Nuggets and the Sixers would get knocked out in the first round. The Nuggets lost to the Jazz, who picked up LeBron James, and the Sixers lost to a sophomore Paul George and Dirk Nowitzki on the Bobcats. Charlotte would get knocked out in the second round, but LeBron took Utah all the way to the finals and would beat the Dwight Howard-led Magic in the finals, winning his first ever championship. In 2013, the Warriors would blossom under the leadership of Stephen Curry and Kevin Durant, who had signed with them in the previous season, and won MVP. They would beat out this season's MVP of LeBron and his Jazz squad in the conference finals, and then defeated the Sixers in the finals in 5. Durant would go out with an injury in Game 4, and Curry played abysmally in the finals, only scoring 5 points in their last game. So that would leave none other than Monta Ellis to win Finals MVP, after he had some terrific outings in the last 2 games to lead the Warriors to victory. As always, let's start off with the retirees. After a terrific 18-year career, Steve Nash decided to hang up his jersey in Miami, never having won a championship. T-Mac would also retire this season, having won a chip with the Jazz as a role player off the bench. Ben Wallace, Jason Terry, and a handful of other NBA greats would also retire, leaving behind big shoes to fill. We also saw some players retire after never getting the chance to maximize their full potential that we saw in real life, including Udonis Haslem, Ish Smith, and JaMychal Green. In the draft lottery, we saw the Pelicans jump up to the first pick to beat out the favorites in Detroit, who dropped to the 4th. The Pistons would get the last laugh, however, as New Orleans drafted Michael Carter-Williams first overall, and the Pistons would get a steal with Rudy Gobert. Otto Porter would get taken at second by the Wizards, almost exactly like real life, where they took him in third. Oladipo would get drafted by the Knicks with the 3rd pick, and Giannis would go 7th to the Boston Celtics, who now had a future dynasty with him and Lowry tied down for the next few years. This draft class is kind of buns, but some other notable picks were McCollum to the Blazers at 14th, another mirror to real life, and Anthony Bennett, the GOAT, who dropped to the 16th pick and went to the Magic. This brings us into the most exciting part of the offseason, free agency. And this free agency had some much bigger names than last season. Dwight Howard, Chris Bosh, Carmelo Anthony, Al Jefferson, Andre Iguodala, Monta Ellis, Kevin Martin, Al Horford, Manu Ginobili, Ricky Rubio, Paul Millsap, DeMar DeRozan, DeAndre Jordan. The top stars take no time to decide where they want to go. Chris Bosh ditches the Nuggets and gets his bag with the Grizzlies. Dwight Howard packs his bags and takes his talents to Oklahoma to join Westbrook and Harden, instantly making them the favorites this season. Al Jefferson signs with the Spurs to join Chris Paul, and they establish themselves as a threat this season as well. But the biggest surprise to everyone is Carmelo Anthony. After not even making the playoffs the previous season, as Bosch was out with injury and team chemistry fell apart, Melo reveals himself as the biggest snake in NBA history and signs with the Nuggets' greatest rival, the 76ers. The city of Denver goes absolutely berserk. Melo jerseys are being burned left and right, stores are getting vandalized, fans are gathering outside the Pepsi Center in solidarity against Melo. The hate is crazy, and even Philadelphia fans aren't happy. They don't want the man who robbed their city of 2 championships back-to-back on their team. They want to run things back with their current squad.
So if you've got 2 eyes and a set of ears and you're actively participating in the NBA Twitter community or just the NBA community overall on social media, chances are you've been presented with the Carmelo Anthony hate, and it's a trend. It's the Carmelo Anthony hate trend as of late, and it's not even your regular average amount of hate. It's like hate, like
No. 1 year deal. No. 19 million, 1 year, Boogie Cup.
No, we don't need him. No.
And I'm very, very angry about this team.
The guy plays half of the basketball court. He plays half-court basketball just to look to score. He plays no defense, okay? He's never been a great defender, never will be, okay? He's never a great pass maker, basketball IQ. He's none of that type of stuff.
You can't have cancer on your team, and Carmelo Anthony is like cancer.
Carmelo Anthony, the biggest loser out the pack. Stop repping my hood, dog. You ain't from it, okay?
Fucking ripping off this jersey, bro. This dude is a bum. This dude's a bum. This dude's a bum. This dude's a bum. This dude's a bum.
You pookie, nigga. I mean, that's all you are. You pookie. You hustling ass backwards. Used to be the man in high school, homie. Fuck happened to you? Okay? In the words of 50 Cent. Miss me with the bullshit.
To add insult to injury, the Sixers also re-signed Andre Iguodala, to take every other team's hope of winning a ring the next 3 years away completely. Donald Stern, recognizing the backlash and worried about the future of the NBA, vetoes Melo's signing and forces him to go somewhere else. No other big market team wants to risk taking him on in fear of facing the same backlash, and so Melo ends up signing with the Mavericks, a solid up-and-coming squad to Anthony Davis and Valanciunas. Okay, quick editor's note, I promise I did not intervene here. I really have no idea how this happened. I guess even 2K is against super teams. I really wish we could have seen the super team take over though, but I mean, it is what it is. The Sixers may not have been able to sign Melo, but they do add even more defensive depth and signed Ron Artest to a much smaller deal. The Bucks signed Rodney Stuckey, and their young squad gets even better with DeMarcus Cousins still leading the way. Monta Ellis, after just winning Finals MVP for the Warriors, takes his bag and signs for the Bulls, becoming their highest overall player as Rose begins to decline rapidly due to his many injuries over the past few seasons. The Hawks signed Paul Millsap, another real-life coincidence, and was definitely a sleeper signing for them. With LeBron and Deron Williams leading the charge in Utah, he never got to show his potential, and that is exactly what he was hoping to now do in Atlanta. The Jazz would fail to sign anyone of note besides Steven Jackson, who was decent for the Warriors in their finals run, but he was aging quickly. The Magic would replace Howard with Horford, but that probably wouldn't be enough to land them a playoff spot. The Nets take some small wins this offseason, signing Ricky Rubio and Derek Favors, and are looking to make another playoff push this season. Despite losing their 2 best players, the Nuggets don't look too bad as Lawson leads their team alongside Tobias Harris, Bledsoe, and their new signing of Manu Ginobili. It's sad to see, but the Spurs' big 3 have all left. The team still looks good with Al Jefferson and Chris Paul leading the way, but it just isn't the same. In wake of losing Monta Ellis and Stack Jack, the Warriors signed Kevin Martin and Kenneth Faried, both solid players, but not exactly the same caliber. If I had to pick who I believe to be the contenders on this list, there wouldn't be many teams in the East. The only real contenders are the Sixers, who made it to the finals last year and have almost the exact same squad this year, so they could easily run it back, especially with Drummond improving dramatically. In the West, the Spurs, Warriors, and Jazz are all contenders, but the clear favorites are the Thunder. They have 2 of the best rim protectors in the league with Serge Ibaka and Dwight Howard. Plus, they have 2 of the top 10 players in the NBA with James Harden and Russell Westbrook. To start the season off, the Bucks yet again prove themselves as a dominant regular season team, and are at the top of the East after the first 20 games. DeMarcus Cousins is playing even better than he did last year, and is the leading MVP candidate. To no one's surprise, the Sixers are right behind them, followed by the Raptors, Pacers, and Hawks. Toronto got off to a hot start, but no one expected their streak to last. Out west, the Thunder dominate exactly how they're supposed to, and have 0 losses in their first 20 games, behind Defensive Player of the Year favorite Dwight Howard. The Rockets are in second, led by Damian Lillard, who is currently coming off the bench and is by far the favorite for the 6th Man of the Year. However, he's begun to start the past few games, so he most likely won't be eligible to win by the end of the year. They are followed by the Lakers, Jazz, Kings, and Warriors at 6th. While they might be a low seed now, they're expected to come back as soon as Durant gets back on the court, after suffering a spine injury in the finals last year. Halfway through the season, the Bucks lose steam and drop to the 4th seed, but the Raptors maintain their pace and are still in 3rd, in part due to Terrence Ross breaking out this season, who is leading the race for MIP. Out west, the Thunder are still dominating, and have only lost 2 games out of 40. The Rockets are still thriving and in 3rd, and the Grizzlies have jumped up in the standings to be the 5th seed. The Lakers fall out of the top 8 as Kobe suffers a devastating spine injury, and will be out for the remainder of the season. The 2014 All-Stars have a handful of new faces, but mostly the players we come to expect each year. Goran Dragic makes his first All-Star appearance, as well as Paul Millsap, Monta Ellis, and Klay Thompson, who not only made the team but was chosen as a starter. Millsap is proving himself to be the best player on the Hawks, which is impressive considering he's playing alongside Rondo, Teague, and Joe Johnson. Ellis also is proving himself as a bona fide star, making the team over his teammate Derrick Rose, demonstrating that last year's playoff run wasn't just a fluke. He wanted to lead a team of his own. LeBron leads the West to a victory, and wins himself another All-Star Game MVP. Dragic was playing lights out for the Suns, but unfortunately he was the only one, and Phoenix decided to fully tank and trade away Amari Stoudemire and Corey Maggette for a washed-up Brandon Roy. The Thunder end the season with a 71-11 record, only 1 win away from tying the Chicago Bulls' all-time record. And honestly, if it weren't for Russell Westbrook being injured for a good chunk of the season with a pinched nerve, they probably would have destroyed the record. Howard and Harden both end up on the All-NBA second team, and Howard reclaims Defensive Player of the Year from LeBron. DeMarcus Cousins wins his first ever MVP, after single-handedly leading the Bucks to the 5th seed. Giannis Antetokounmpo wins Rookie of the Year, having blossomed a lot sooner than they did in real life, making this Celtics squad look like a real scary matchup for years to come. Ramon Sessions wins 6th Man of the Year, coming off the bench for the Timberwolves, who did not do well this year despite his best efforts. Klay Thompson unsurprisingly wins Most Improved, after going from a great player to an all-star starter and 3rd-team All-NBA member. Out west, the Thunder unsurprisingly sweep the Kobe-less Lakers, who had managed to sneak into the 8th seed due to some great performances from Pau Gasol and Hassan Whiteside, who's beginning to break out this season. The previous champions are a little scared about this first matchup against Memphis, as they'll be missing Kevin Martin for the rest of the season, and Kevin Durant had a pinched nerve that was bothering him. Chris Bosh, however, has an atrocious playoffs, only averaging 16 points a game, and Durant and Curry work together to sweep the Grizzlies in 4. The next matchup was a Texas showdown, with the San Antonio Spurs and the Houston Rockets. In Game 1, Chris Paul goes off, scoring 22 points in the first quarter. However, just before the end of the second quarter, he sprains his ankle and has to sit out for the rest of the game. The Rockets start to catch up in the second half, but the Spurs hold out and take the lead. Chris Paul is ruled out for at least a week, and the Rockets take advantage and win 2 games. But so do the Spurs. Chris Paul comes back for Game 6, and they blow out the Rockets by 20, winning the series. The Jazz would play Carmelo's Mavericks at the 2nd and 7th seeds, and LeBron would come out swinging with a 55-point near triple-double. Utah take a 3-0 lead, and despite Dallas holding out in Game 4, the Jazz would come back in Game 5 and take the series. Out east, the Sixers would face the 8th seed Howardless Magic. In a shocking turn of events, the Magic would blow out Philly by 20 in Game 1, but they would quickly respond in Game 2 with a blowout of their own. Game 3 was a close one, but the Magic would win behind a team effort where 7 players scored in the double digits. They would also take Game 4, and the Sixers were starting to sweat. They would win the next 2 games, and we would have a Game 7. It would end up being close, but Chris Middleton would lead the way scoring 26, and the Magic would upset the last year's finalists. This was the second time this happened to the Sixers, and Wade was furious. He had a great showing, averaging 39 and 7, but the rest of the team didn't. While their defense was solid, Wade was the only one showing up in offense,
other than maybe Lou Williams. His contract was expiring this year, and with this loss, the Sixers nearly guaranteed that Wade was out. The next matchup was the 4th seed Hawks and the 5th seed Bucks, and this would prove to be another great series. In Game 1, Boogie only scores 20 points, and the Hawks win by 30. They win the next 2 games, but the Hawks win the next 2 after that, taking a 3-2 lead. The Bucks hold on in Game 6, and we've got ourselves another 7-game series. This last game ended up being a bruiser for the big men, as Millsap, Nene, and Cousins would all fall out, leaving the guards to battle out in the closing minutes. In Boogie's absence, Brandon Jennings stepped up and took leadership. After knocking down a pair of free throws, he embarrasses the Hawks defense and sidesteps all of them, easily laying in the bucket. He then finds Derek Brown in the paint, who lays it in to take the lead from Milwaukee with just 35 seconds to go. The Hawks find Teague, who spins in the paint and gets fouled. He comes in clutch and knocks them both in, taking the lead back for Atlanta. The Bucks call a timeout, but seem to forget the play they were supposed to run and leave it up to Tony Allen, who breaks the contested close shot. They intentionally foul Rondo, and he surprisingly hits both his free throws, making a 3-point game. Jennings pulls up right away on a heat check but misses it. Brown grabs the rebound and passes out for Tony Allen, who also misses. Milwaukee gets another rebound but don't have time to pass it back out, and the Hawks will move on. The Pacers and Raptors were up next. The Raptors were the higher seed at 3rd, but the Pacers had a much better team overall, most notably Klay Thompson and Aldridge. Indiana had also swept Toronto in just 5 games in the first round last year. However, last time they were led by Danny Granger, who was out this series with injury. Game 1 was close, and all hinged on this last play for the Pacers, who were down by 2 with 4 seconds to go. They inbound to Klay, who gets doubled and fails to pass it off to Steven Adams, who cuts to the rim wide open. Instead, he turns around and tries to shoot it with the defense all over him, and he misses the shot as the Raptors take Game 1. The Raptors blow them out in the next 2 games, despite Kemba Walker only scoring 9 of 5 in each game. With Toronto up 3-0, this series looked over. But the Pacers win in Game 4, as Kemba again only scores just 5 points. Game 5 was close, as the Pacers were up by just 1 with 30 seconds to go. However, Klay's able to find the open man this time around, as Aldridge slams it in off the assist. The Raptors come back up the court and try and run a 2-for-1, but DeRozan misses the layup, and the Pacers would hold on for another game. This was the Pacers' chance to come back, to be the first team ever to come back from being down 3-0. And with 30 seconds left in Game 6, the Pacers were in the driver's seat as Nathan Dwyer misses the go-ahead basket to give Toronto the lead. All the Pacers had to do was hold onto the ball and make their next shot. But with 12 seconds left in the shot clock, Raymond Felton finds Klay wide open by the rim. Before he can get a basket though, Cody Zeller is all over him. He tries to put up a fake, but Zeller doesn't budge, so he just goes straight up and misses it. This wasn't good news for the Pacers, but it wasn't horrible. All they had to do was stop the Raptors from scoring the next 20 seconds, and they could push the series to a Game 7. And as the Raptors inbound to Kemba, Indiana feels really good about their chances with how horribly he's been playing the series. He dribbles the ball out, and decides to go for a contested fade from 3. He misses it, but Klay fails to box Dwyer out, and he gets the tip in, winning the game. NBA Twitter was real quick to come after Klay for his multiple screw-ups. After the game, #RossMIP was #1 trending, as fans were quick to notice that Terrence Ross, who was the runner-up for MVP, had managed to beat out Klay in this series, and had performed even better in the playoffs than he did the regular season, averaging nearly 24 points a game. There were still many that defended Klay, however, as he did average 30 points a game during the playoffs, and while he may have fumbled the bag down the stretch a few times, he was the one that kept Indiana in the game in the first place. If there was anyone deserving of hate, it was Kemba, who averaged 20 in the regular season, but 4 games in the series he didn't even score 10. The last series of the East was the Nets and Bobcats. While they may have been the 7th seed, Charlotte still had an elite team, and had proven themselves to be capable of toppling higher seeds, as just 2 years ago they'd beaten Philadelphia in the first round as an 8th seed. The Nets had a great all-around squad, but their best players were all still so young. Brooklyn proved themselves in Game 1, however, as Butler scores 39 in a 30-point blowout. The Bobcats come back in Game 2, and in Game 3 Paul George goes out and scores 46 to give Charlotte a 2-1 lead.
And welcome everyone to the NBA Conference Semifinals on ESPN, presented by Wells Fargo.
In the second round of the playoffs, the Thunder and Spurs will be facing off.
While the Spurs had a great team, and if they were out east would be a shoo-in for the finals, they were in the west, and were facing the greatest team the NBA has seen since Jordan's Bulls. Despite Oklahoma being the clear favorites, Game 1 is close, but the Spurs end up losing by 6 as James Harden has an all-time great performance, scoring 46 with 16 assists and 8 rebounds. Game 2 is another close one, and with a minute left, the Thunder are up by 2 and have possession. Ibaka inbounds it, but Morris blocks the pass straight into Ibaka's body, and it's San Antonio's ball. Paul finds Jefferson in the middle, but he can't score. The Thunder passed around on the other end, finding Jeremy Evans in the corner for a 3. He misses, but Howard gets the putback. Paul again finds Jefferson, and this time he slams it in. There's now just 40 seconds left, and Westbrook decides to go for the 2-for-1 and drives in. Paul contests his first shot, but Westbrook bullies everyone in the paint and puts his miss back in, putting the Thunder ahead by 4. Al Jefferson tries to get his own 2-for-1 shot on a timeout, but he bricks it, and the Thunder would go on to win the game. Game 3 is yet again close. This time the Spurs up by 3 at home, but behind some clutch free throws by CP3 and a missed 3 from Westbrook, the Spurs get their first win. Unfortunately, this win would not be enough for San Antonio, as the Thunder take the next 2 games to win the series. While the Spurs kept up with them, the story of the series was the Thunder's versatility. If one of their stars had a bad game, it didn't really matter, because they had 2 other ones that could light it up if need be, as well as a great supporting cast of Rudy Fernandez, Dominic McGuire, and of course Serge Ibaka, all of whom could go out and score 20 if need be. Just look at Game 5. Harden only had 7 points on 3 for 12 shooting, yet it didn't matter because the rest of the team took leadership and dominated. The next series was a rematch of the ages, the Utah Jazz and the Golden State Warriors. Both teams were fully healthy and had a lot to prove this series. They both weren't quite as good as last year, but they were still both serious contenders. Game 1 ended up being a sweep as Curry went ice cold and only scored 9. The Warriors managed to bounce back, however, and won the next 2 games to take the series lead. Curry also hyperextended his knee in Game 3, but he was still ruled healthy enough to play in Game 4, and boy did they need him. The game was tied at 106 with a minute left to go, and with so many players' legacies on the line, you have to see it to believe what happens next.
LeBron against Durant.
Oh, LeBron.
And now here's Curry. 44 seconds left here in the fourth quarter.
Oh my God. KD. What a killer. You got Deron Williams. There you go.
And on our sideline, our reporter.
He went out of bounds. Oh no.
They're chasing shots. Let's see if they can rise to the big moment, Kevin.
Here's Curry.
Oh man, come on.
So he'll get a chance.
Come on, Spencer.
Using that signature pump fake, Steph causes the defender to overcommit.
And so both free throws are good, and it's a 3-point game. 26 seconds left in the fourth quarter. Williams for 3.
Oh no way! Oh my God, what a pass from LeBron though.
The game is up.
Here's Curry. Rebounded by Jackson. And so it's Jackson who brings it up for Utah.
Oh, oh my God. Oh, that's it. That's it. That's in. That's in. Oh.
Well, the game is on the line. Who would you rather go to than Steph Curry? Who?
What a shot. That's game.
So we see the Warriors get the win here. And now they're sitting.
What a way to finish.
Game 4 was certainly a heartbreaker for Utah, but they still held out strong in Game 5, and were down by just 3 with a minute left to go. They inbounded into Duran, who steps over the half-court line and loses possession. This game now seemed hopeless, but the Jazz managed to get a stop on defense, and it's still a one-possession game. Deron Williams pulls down the rebound and sprints up court. He stops at the three-point line and doesn't hesitate to pull up from long range, and knocks it in. This man may have the world's biggest feet when it comes to inbound possessions, but he's also a stone-cold killer. The Warriors have 20 seconds to win the game, but settle on letting Kenneth Faried take it up, who bums the layup. However, in overtime, the Warriors scorch on ahead and win the series in just 5 games. This loss was devastating for Utah, and especially for LeBron, who played his heart out the series, coming just short of averaging a 40-point triple-double. King James thought he found his sidekick in D. Will, but he was just way too inconsistent. I mean, sure, he scored 34 points in Game 5, but he hadn't got more than 20 in the first 4 games. And it certainly didn't help that Paul Millsap had gone left to Atlanta. Speaking of Millsap in Atlanta, they were facing the Magic in the second round, and there was no clear favorite. Millsap had stepped up big time for the Hawks, enough to make the All-Star team this year, enough to solidify himself as the best player on the team that had started to stagnate in recent years. The Magic, on the other hand, were the 8th seed, but they did just beat out the first seed 76ers, who were the favorites going into these playoffs, so there were high expectations for them, and in Game 1 they delivered. Orlando had 7 players in double digits, with Chris Middleton leading the way. Game 2 and 3 both went to the Hawks, and they regained momentum in the series. Game 4 was a potential momentum shifter, and the Magic stepped up as the game was tied at 110 with only 30 seconds to go. The Hawks pass it into Jeff Teague, who drives in hopes of getting a quick basket. He speeds past an aging Vince Carter, but Vince shuffles his feet and meets him at the rim to block his layup. Teague grabs his own rebound and tries to put it back in, but again Carter's there to knock his shot away. This leaves the Magic a full 24 seconds to win the game, but after dribbling down the clock, Calderon can't score this contested 3, and we're going into overtime. The game remains close as the Hawks are up by just 2 with 50 seconds left. The Magic pass the ball around, and it ends up in Brandon Bass's hands, who heat checks himself and tries a far-out fadeaway 2. Surprisingly, he actually drills it and ties the game up. The Hawks call timeout and run a play for Millsap to get open from mid-range. He gets open, but he can't score the shot. Luckily, Rondo's right by the rim to put it back in, and he gives the Hawks the lead. The Magic call a timeout and get into Jameer Nelson, who abandons the game plan when he sees Middleton cutting to the rim for a wide-open lay-in, and he ties it up with 25 seconds still left to go. The Hawks decide to hold the ball to get the last shot. Rondo comes off a screen and passes it in to Paul Millsap, who bullies his defender in the paint and puts up a layup off of a spin to the basket. He misses, but grabs the rebound and puts it back in. The crowd erupts in anger and disbelief as the Hawks team storms the court to celebrate. Atlanta carried that momentum into Game 5. The game was real close all the way up until the fourth quarter, when the Hawks go absolutely berserk in the last 3 minutes and go from being behind to winning the game by 15. Atlanta would be going to the conference finals for the first time since the 1960s. The last matchup was the Nets and Raptors. There were a few close games, but the Nets still sweep in 4 as Jimmy Butler keeps up his amazing play, averaging over 30 points a game for the playoffs.
It's trust in the ride here, and loyalty to the goal. You are in my way, and I am not slowing down.
Sit down, be humble.
The Western Conference Finals was seen as the true finals, as these squads were clearly the best 2 teams left. The Thunder were favored, but the Warriors were expected to at least win a few games, and maybe upset Oklahoma. To Golden State's dismay, that didn't happen as the Thunder steamrolled through the series, winning in just 4 games. The story of this series was role players. The Thunder had them, the Warriors did not. Curry and Durant nearly averaged a combined 70 points a game for the series, but since no one else on their team could buy a bucket, they got swept. Out east, the Hawks would be facing the Brooklyn Nets. The Hawks were certainly the better team, but they also had just got 2 gruesome 7-game series back-to-back, and were pretty gassed out. The Nets win Game 1 as Jimmy Butler continues to put on a clinic, scoring 30 points. However, he goes somewhat cold the next 3 games, averaging a little over 20 points a game, and the Hawks take full advantage to take a 3-1 series lead, despite losing Jeff Teague in Game 2 with a cracked vertebrae in his neck. The Nets would come back to win the next 2 games, but the Hawks seal the deal in their 3rd 7-game series in a row, and would be advancing to the NBA Finals.
An almost unthinkable storyline has unfolded in this NBA Finals.
To say the Thunder were favorites going into this series would be an understatement to say the least. Just looking at the matchup, this should be one of the cleanest sweeps in playoff history. On one side, you have the first seed Oklahoma City Thunder, who not only dominated during the season to win 70 games, but also trashed all their Western Conference matchups. This team not only had 3 superstars, but great depth and fantastic role players on their bench. This was one of the greatest teams constructed since the '96 Bulls, and they knew it. On the other side, you have the 4th seed Atlanta Hawks, a team that couldn't beat out the Brooklyn Nets or Toronto Raptors in the regular season. They had scraped by in each of their previous matchups, every single one going to 7 games, and their team was tired. Jeff Teague, who's usually their star player in these playoffs, had gotten injured in the previous series. They had a pretty deep team, but they were running on fumes at this point, and if they won a single game in this series, it would be a surprise. The Thunder dominate in Game 1, as the Hawks' fatigue shows. Their highest scoring player was Wayne Ellington, who came off the bench. Rondo only had 8 and 10, and Millsap only scored 7 points while playing just 22 minutes. NBA analysts were labeling the series as the worst final since 2002, a year where Kobe and Shaq faced a New Jersey Nets team in a historically weak Eastern Conference, with a squad of players that only had one player averaging more than 50 points a game. The similarities were quite striking. But then, the unthinkable happened. After a close game of back-and-forth lead changes, the Hawks managed to win Game 2. Millsap led the team in points, followed by none other than David Anderson, a Kiwi center who averaged 5 points a game during the regular season, but stepped up big time, namely from behind the arc where he was 3 for 3. But this is just a fluke game, right? Surely this can't happen again. Could it? Apparently so. The Hawks stars were drudging through games, but their bench was coming in big. Okay, so the Hawks may have been able to scrounge out 2 games, but surely that would be... Oh my god. They did it again. The Hawks are up 3-1. The Atlanta Hawks are up 3-1 to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Millsap and Joe Johnson had caught fire, and the Hawks were fixing to pull off the greatest upset in NBA history. No team had ever come back 3-1 in an NBA Finals, but if there was ever a team that was going to, it was this Thunder team. In Game 5, the Thunder had had enough, and come back in Thunder fashion behind a fantastic performance not just from their superstars, but from Fernandez and Dooling as well, who scored 24 and 19 respectively. Game 6 was another blowout, as Westbrook goes off to score 44 points, and we would have ourselves a tied series. It all came down to this last game, and it was just the game NBA fans were hoping to see. Harden and Howard dominated in the first 3 quarters, but they both fouled out in the 4th, leaving Westbrook alone to win this series for them. The Thunder are up by 4 in closing time, and the basketball that transpires in these closing 3 minutes is some of the most clutch scoring in finals history, as both teams go back and forth.
Rondo, back to Millsap.
Wide open.
On the assist by Rajon Rondo, and at the shooting guard. That's the lineup in the game for Oklahoma City. To the paint, here's Ibaka.
Yo, good D.
As he's been, he's never let his emotions get out of control.
That's open. That's in. Ryan Gomez.
To hear what Mike Woodson said to his team, he said, look, you guys are playing physical and I like that, but it has to be under control.
Westbrook, let's go, bro.
Way too many foul shots.
He better win Finals MVP if they win.
4-point game. This is a good Millsap.
Man, once Millsap gets the ball in his hands, everyone in the building knowing he was going to take and make that shot.
For Oklahoma City, they've gone 8 of 14 from the floor here in the 4th quarter. There's the pass to Fernandez.
Oh my god.
With a minute left, Millsap drives in, but he gets his shit slapped by Ibaka himself. This block felt like a momentum changer for the game, as the Thunder were up by 5, but off the inbound, Millsap silences the crowd with a ferocious slam. However, Millsap gets a little too excited and double teams Westbrook, leaving Mozgov wide open by the rim for an easy 2. The Hawks take it back up, and Rondo finds Millsap cutting, but yet again, Ibaka is waiting to say,
"Not in my heart."
You can't manage to block Rondo's layup the next play, however, and the Hawks would narrow the margin to just 3 points. He does manage, however, to hustle up court and get right in position for Westbrook to lob it up for an alley-oop, and he puts the final nail in the coffin. Or was it? Nene hits a layup next to the rim, and Millsap again puts it down, making it a 3-point game yet again. Westbrook gets fouled, and he scores his free throws, which doesn't give the Hawks much time to respond. They try to pass into Millsap once more, but Ibaka yet again comes in clutch and wraps his enormous hands around the basketball, forcing a drop ball. He soars in the air above Millsap, tapping into Mozgov. And just like that, the Thunder won Oklahoma City their first ever title.
And they've done it, the new NBA champions.
And how about the road that these guys have been down, and it ends with an NBA championship. A heartfelt congratulations to everyone who's taking part in that celebration right there. Pure joy.
You have to hand it to the entire organization. They work together to get right here.
And guys, what a reward for the fan base. I mean, I know one thing. They're going to enjoy this memory for a long, long time.
They may not have won it as easily as expected, but a championship is a championship. Westbrook ends up taking home Finals MVP, and all is well. The Thunder look like they've just made themselves a dynasty. You know, as long as nothing happens to screw it up. I've already finished streaming the 14-15 season, but go ahead and follow me on Twitch if you haven't already to get you streams live. Before I release the next simulation video, I'm going to be making a 5-year recap and compare the simulation to real life, what all has gone differently. But until then, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.